Never judge a book by its cover, they say. But what if the cover was made of human skin? What if the ink told not just stories, but the very lives of the people who had vanished within these walls? You won't believe what they found in the Midnight Library. When the old Sinclair Library in the heart of New York City was scheduled for demolition, no one really protested. The building had stood for over a century. Its Gothic spires and cracked stone gargoyles, once a proud landmark of the city, now reduced to a decaying eyesore. Its doors had been locked for decades, the dust of forgotten books thick enough to write warnings in. But for Madeline, the library's last caretaker, this was personal. She had grown up in the shadow of the Sinclair, her childhood days spent wandering its endless labyrinth of shelves, her nights dreaming of the lives contained in its pages. The news of its destruction hit her like the closing of a favorite book, too soon, and with too many unanswered questions. "It's just an old building," her co-worker Rick had said as they boxed up what few valuables remained. "Let it go, Mads. You're acting like they're tearing down the Sistine Chapel." But Madeline couldn't let it go. Something about the Sinclair Library didn't sit right with her. A faint hum in the walls, a sense that the shadows stretched a little too far, and the whispering. Always the whispering. It started as a soft breeze through the shelves, but if you stayed long enough, it would twist into something more. Faint voices murmuring in the corners of your mind. Rick had laughed it off, but Madeline knew better. She had heard her name once, clear as a bell. The demolition was set for Friday. By Thursday night, Madeline was the last person left in the building, tasked with doing a final sweep before the wrecking crew arrived. The electricity had been shut off days ago, and the only light came from the beam of her flashlight, cutting through the thick, oppressive darkness. She moved quickly, her footsteps echoing eerily against the marble floors. Room by room, shelf by shelf, she checked for anything that might have been left behind. It was in the basement, an area she rarely visited, that she found it. A door she had never noticed before, tucked behind an old, crumbling bookshelf. Its wood was dark and weathered, its brass handle cold to the touch. And there, carved into the doorframe in jagged letters, were the words, "The Midnight Collection." Madeline's breath hitched. She tried to recall if anyone had ever mentioned this part of the library before, but nothing came to mind. The Sinclair's layout was infamous for its many dead ends and hidden corners, but this door, this felt different. Almost as if it had been waiting for her. Her hand trembled as she turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into the black. The air was colder here, tinged with the metallic scent of damp stone. She hesitated, then descended, her flashlight flickering as if in protest. At the bottom, she found a chamber unlike any she had ever seen. Shelves carved directly into the stone walls stretched high above her, filled with books of every size and color. But these weren't ordinary books. Their covers were strange, their textures unsettling. She reached for one, her fingers brushing against the surface. It was warm. The title was embossed in gold. James O'Connor, 1927. Madeline's stomach churned as she flipped it open. Instead of printed words, the pages were filled with hand-scrawled entries, each detailing mundane events: a morning coffee, a walk to work, a dinner with friends. But as she turned the pages, the entries grew darker. Paranoia seeped through the words. "Someone's following me. The shadows move when I'm not looking. Help me. Please." The final page was blank, except for a single word etched deeply into the paper. Trapped. She dropped the book, as if it had burned her. It landed with a sickening thud, its spine bending unnaturally. Her flashlight beam danced over the shelves, illuminating dozens, no, hundreds, of similar books. Each bore a name and a year. She recognized some of the names from old missing persons reports plastered on the library's bulletin board during her childhood. Others were unfamiliar, but equally ominous. "No way," she whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air. As she backed away, her flashlight landed on a desk at the center of the room. Upon it lay a massive ledger, its leather cover cracked and worn. Against her better judgment, she approached and opened it. The first page contained a list of rules. Do not remove any book from this room. Do not read aloud. Do not stay past midnight. Her watch read 11:43 p.m. Panic clawed at her chest. She had to leave. Now. But as she turned to leave, a new sound filled the air. A low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Her flashlight flickered again, then went out entirely, plunging her into darkness. She fumbled for her phone, its weak glow barely enough to illuminate the path back to the staircase. But the door she had entered through was gone. In its place was solid stone. She spun around, her heart hammering. The growling grew louder, joined by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and getting closer. Madeline ran. The shelves seemed to stretch endlessly, the chamber shifting and warping with every turn. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the cold air slicing her lungs. She tripped over something and fell hard, the impact jarring her flashlight back to life. The beam revealed the object she had stumbled over. A book. Her name was on the cover. She screamed, the sound swallowed by the oppressive darkness. The footsteps were right behind her now, accompanied by whispers that crawled under her skin. She bolted upright and ran again, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. Up ahead, she saw it. Another door, identical to the one she had entered through. Hope surged through her as she reached for the handle, but before she could turn it, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It had no discernible features, just an abyssal form that seemed to absorb the light around it. "You shouldn't have come here," it rasped, its voice like the grinding of stone. Madeline's knees buckled. The figure raised a hand, pointing to the ledger on the desk. She didn't need to be told twice. Stumbling back to the desk, she grabbed the ledger, her hands trembling as she flipped through its pages. Names filled the columns, each accompanied by a date and a status. Returned, trapped, taken. Her own name was at the bottom of the list. The status was blank. "Fill it in," the figure commanded. "What do you mean?" she stammered. "Your choice. Return or stay." The growling ceased, replaced by a deafening silence. Madeline's mind raced. She didn't understand the rules, didn't know the consequences. But one thing was clear. She couldn't stay in this place. "Return," she whispered, her voice cracking. The figure reached out, its hand passing through her chest. Pain unlike anything she had ever felt coursed through her, and then nothing. The darkness faded. She was lying on the floor of the Sinclair Library, her flashlight beside her. The basement door was gone, replaced by an unbroken wall. The next morning, the wrecking crew arrived. Madeline watched from across the street as the first blow of the wrecking ball shattered the Sinclair's facade. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment she thought she heard whispers carried on the wind. In her pocket, she felt something sharp. She pulled it out and froze. It was a small, leather-bound book. Her name was etched on the cover. She didn't need to open it to know what it contained. Subscribe, or the next story might be about you.